Well guys, this is the tier list recap for the Taking a Look At series, where we've been trying to figure out the ticket farming viability for several of these kiddie casino games, also known as redemption arcade games. It's not specifically looking at any one particular arcade franchise, but this is more or less my opinion from playing several copies of these games from an amalgamation of various mainstream arcades, independent ones, and even more obscure places like bowling alleys or decrepit laser tag arcade corners. Arcades can change the ticket payouts and the cost to play for any of these games, so I'm more interested in looking at the games themselves and examining the difficulty and consistency for achieving these jackpots. This is more like a fantasy league than any real arcade that may exist. I had initially made these rules a few years ago for how these games should be graded, but as the series evolved, so did the reasoning behind each placement. So here's a new tier list, and we're going to regrade everything. I would consider everything above B- to be viable ticket farming options. While I have some notes for each game, this is more improvised than what I usually do here. If you're new here, you'll see it's a real mixed bag of games. Some popular ones, some vintage ones, and some weird ones. If you want to learn more about any of these games, I have a series that takes a closer look at each of these, so let's get started. Okay, so we're going to kick this off with those basketball into hoop kind of arcade games. So in the video, it was a lazy generalization of any possible kind of game that fit into this category. But when it came to tickets, I was specifically focusing in on these ice branded ones. But I just find that these games typically don't have high ticket payouts. You will find on decals, they're very hard set to low numbers, and by that alone, this stays in D tier. The arcade typically doesn't really have an incentive to go out of their way to adjust these numbers. You're typically playing these games for the novelty of spending $2 to throw a bunch of basketballs. I will say there are newer exceptions to this. Some newer versions of these arcade basketball games can be programmable to have modern jackpot numbers. So obviously use your own judgment when deciding its viability, but I typically find arcades don't go out of their ways to make these competitive ticket farming options. Alright, so up next we got Basketball Pro. It's essentially this game where you gotta punch this basketball button to shoot a bunch of balls into this moving hoop. If you've seen my other videos, you will know I have a personal vendetta against this game. And if we're gonna be objective and put that aside for a moment, I will say this is a very powerful ticket farming option. It has a moving jackpot amount, a score target that is visible. You don't have to guess what you need to win this one. It can go up and down depending on wins and losses, so I had originally graded this in B tier because the copy I was playing on was absolute garbage. But from playing more copies, I have found other versions that are much worse, and some versions that are very honest, and these ones are very reliable for tickets. So I had initially had this in B tier, but I think this deserves A+. I will say though, you have to be very careful with this game. There do exist bait versions where that punchable button doesn't work because there's a rip in it or something, and the sensor itself might be dirty or the balls are too dirty and it's not counting your score properly. If you think you have a bait copy, the easy tells are if the jackpot is crazy high and the score to beat it is incredibly low. If it seems too good to be true, use your own judgment. It is probably broken and they're not turning it off. Also, if you've seen my April Fool's video, you may remember that I mentioned this game has drawn blood on me twice. That number is now up to 5 times. I'm not kidding, this game has given me bloody knuckles, and I have tried different forms of punching that basketball button. I have tried, punching straight down. I've tried kind of doing like that angry gamer fist one. Every time I just find it chips the skin off of my knuckles, and that kind of sucks, so... While the scabs on my hand do heal, the tickets are forever, so it's a fair trade-off. Alright, up next we got Blox Breaker. So this is a game where basically you have to throw balls at a screen, you have to break a bunch of boxes, do this under a time limit. If you broke enough, you get a jackpot. I really hate this game. It stays in C-. This is not negotiable for me. I have only ever witnessed a jackpot on this game once, and it was when someone cheated on the game. Yeah, so this was back when I was a casual and I wasn't really taking the min-maxing kiddie casinos very seriously. One of my friends had figured out that if you took the player 2 balls and then swiped again for player 1 on another play, player 1 was accepting both the player 1 and player 2 balls. So you could shoot the player 1 balls, and while you were waiting an eternity for those balls to come back to you, you could start using your player 2 balls to keep your momentum going in the game. It is the only way I have ever seen this game jackpotted before. It is absolutely horrible. I would recommend this game as a sick joke to play on your friends. If you're bringing one of your casual friends to the arcade for the first time, you could be like, hey, look, it's Blox Breaker. This is great for tickets. You should try it. And then when they do play, just watch the look on their face when the game wastes more than half of the in-game timer just to return the balls back to you. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter what that time limit is, you are probably not throwing more than like 8 balls during this game. It is absolutely terrible. That said, it did produce what I believe is the funniest comment on the Taking a Look At series. It's hard to say because, you know, the vacuum video had some really good comments as well, but at least for Taking a Look At, this is my favorite comment on the whole channel. I mean, this is just great, you know, like, if anyone is ever studying the straight man, funny man trope in comedy, I think you should just show them this comment. Alright, so up next we've got Centipede Chaos. If you're familiar with the traditional Centipede franchise, this is basically that, but rebooted for the Redemption Arcade. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I am very biased. This is my personal favorite. This is a very easy S tier for me. I will say for this list, the fun aspect is not a serious part of its placement. I genuinely believe this is a strong ticket farming option if you are good enough. If we want to look at the fun aspect for a second, despite the fact that I've spent hundreds of hours making videos about kiddie casino games, I will admit I do not find most of these games to be fun. Almost all of these are boring, they feel like chores, they make me feel like a monkey in a psych study. I would not play these for fun, but the part that is fun to me is min-maxing the ticket potential, so figuring out how to stretch the value of your dollar and seeing which games are good and bad for this. That's kind of why I'm making this list in the first place. So if we want to go back to the ticket side of this game, the only mild grievance I will accept for this game is that it's a little on the long side. Most of the other S tier games you'll eventually see, they take, you know, like 15 seconds to a minute, whereas this game is around 5 minutes on a good run. That said, I still think this is a very strong ticket farming option. If we redid this tier list as an XY axis that was examining the time versus tickets, you would see that it does very poorly in the time section. But I would still firmly believe this is one of the strongest ticket outputs you could get at the arcade. If you were just strictly looking at the value of your dollar to the tickets, this game makes a lot of tickets throughout all the stages you have to play, and then you get the bonus from Mega Spiders. So if you were just strictly looking at the value of your dollar versus the credits versus the tickets, this is easily one of the strongest games at the arcade. You just have to not be bad and be able to win. Oh, and I mentioned in the video I wasn't sure about that dynamic difficulty setting. I still don't know how it works. Okay, so up next we've got Connect 4 Hoops. This is kind of a meme tier game, but it does belong in C tier. And if you do win, it does pay out better than a lot of the games we will see in D tier. I will say the novelty of playing Connect 4 by throwing basketballs makes the game very interesting. So it's fun in a casual format, but don't get too caught up with the tickets on this one. It's only here because I wanted to round out that basketball video with 3 different games to make that silly pun, but anyways. Alright, so up next we've got Crazy Tower, which is only my second favorite crazy arcade game. It's basically one of those like tower stacking games. You have to reach the top to win the jackpot, so every copy I've played is you have to stack 50 floors of the Crazy Tower and it gets faster the further you go. This is a very par for the course rotational payout game, and for that reason it belongs in A tier. You're going to see this is a common trend with every game that fits this cookie cutter category. So if you're not familiar with this term I'm trying to coin, a rotational payout game is basically, it has a payout window where the game is keeping track of how many wins and losses go into the game. So every time a casual loses on this game, it brings the payout win ratio lower and it makes the game adjust the difficulty to become easier. So if you understand that a lot of people are losing on this game, you would rotate into the game eventually and take one of the wins and leave. I would not recommend this as a game that you sit at and farm jackpots back to back. I will say though, I do like this game because you can win outside of the payout window, it's just very difficult. So it is a skill-based game with an asterisk. And just to give an added bonus, the game does have 4 different sides you can play on, and that part I find really helps with bringing in more casuals and helping bring the win rate down so that you can come back sooner to take the jackpot. That said, I find it's a bit of a double-edged sword. When I play this game and a casual picks the port across from me, I find that can get really distracting. And speaking of distractions, sometimes dust or flies can actually get stuck in the game, and while amusing, this can be distracting to, keeping a rhythm with the timing. Alright, so up next we've got Crossy Road. This is a Redemption Arcade adaptation of that mobile game, where you're basically playing isometric Frogger. This is a very cookie-cutter example of what I believe a B+ game should look like. It is a good ticket farming option. It is skill-based, but sometimes the RNG can screw you. But the reason why I don't have this higher than B+ is more so because of the way the jackpot works. In this game, you have a jackpot target, and it increments every time someone wins. So you will eventually hit a point where you can't take this jackpot anymore. The game needs to be turned off to bring back the jackpot target, so you typically only get so many jackpots out of this game, and you have to come back the next day for the numbers to come down. I've also found that at some arcades, this game just randomly turns off and you get into this Windows boot loop. While this can kill your run randomly, I've found that this can actually help you because it brings the jackpot target down every time it does this boot loop, and you're able to get a few more jackpots out of it. All of that aside, I have really grown to like this game. If I was going to redo any videos, I would love to expand on this one a bit more, and by that I mean maybe show a long play and dissect every mini decision that goes into that, because there are so many split-second decisions that go into this game, and just showing some B-roll and talking over it isn't enough justice. This game has a deceptively large skill ceiling. Alright, so up next we've got Deal or No Deal. This is a Redemption Arcade adaptation of the game show. I'm going to assume you know what this is, and if not, I'm going to assume you're familiar with 3-Card Monty, but instead of 3-Card Monty, this is a bunch of suitcases. So I had originally had this around A-, and I'm gonna maintain that. I believe this is a strong ticket farming option if you have the eyes for it. And when I say that, I mean it's because the way you pick your case in this game is you have to follow this big Mario Party minigame shuffle where your case gets moved around. And this can get really nauseating to follow, but if you do have the tracking for it, this can be very farmable. Personally, I hate this game as a ticket farming option. I think it's really stressful, and I just hate menuing through the entire game waiting for the end to see if I've won or not. I'm a bit of a doomer on this game, but I will recognize that it is doable. I've done it a few times, but I am not eager to replicate this one. Also, a good number of you guys commented about the setting that can make the case shuffle completely random. I should have mentioned this feature in the video, but honestly, I couldn't imagine an arcade being so anti-fun to have ever turned this on. So if you are playing this mode, I think you throw the game into D tier. I think you move it there and this becomes king of the wheel games. Okay, it's not nearly as bad as the wheel games, so, mild spoiler for when we get to that. Maybe C-, but Does it really matter if you're in C or D? I don't really think you're viable if you're in here. Let's put it back into A- for now. Alright, so up next we've got Despicable Me Jelly Lab. It's an adaptation of an old car dealership infomercial, but instead of trying to sell cars, we're now trying to time a token on this conveyor belt. This is a very confident S- for me. This is easily the best card collecting game I have ever played. It's basically S tier, but I'm leaving S for the truly consistent ticket farming games. A card collecting game will always raise questions about how many of each card goes into the game and how they even get shuffled. You can be good enough to empty the entire machine of its cards, but instead of doing that, I would passively play this game and only try it when a card I needed was on the dispensary belt. Alright, so up next we've got Down the Clown. This is like a Redemption Arcade adaptation of one of those rigged Carnival games where you gotta throw balls at things, but we're downing clowns now. So despite me framing this with a prejudice, I will say a well-maintained copy is not rigged, and this is a very strong ticket farming option. This absolutely deserves A+, and I'm going to make the statement that this is at the top of A+. This is much better than the other A+ games so far. And speaking of prejudices, I assumed this was a rigged Carnival game and never touched it, but roughly half a year ago I started practicing this one, and it's turned out to actually be genuinely kind of fun, and also a very good ticket farming option. It's basically S tier, but it gets demoted because you need to work around the jackpot target that moves on wins and losses. A very good player can price you out of this game if you cannot keep up with the scores they're setting. So, as long as you're the best at this game, this is basically S tier. Alright, so up next we've got Explosive. It's this game where you have to pop a balloon on a buzzsaw, and that's achieved by adding a bunch of air to it, or by achieving a very narrow stop light timing. I think this is around C, C+-ish. It's sometimes doable, but I really hate this format of games. I genuinely believe there is a special place in hell for all of these stop-the-light style arcade games. Alright, so up next we've got Flying Tickets, which is essentially an off-brand version of Flappy Bird. All you really gotta do is clear enough pipes to win a jackpot. And yes, I do know there is an actual Flappy Bird arcade game. I just didn't mention it because I'd like to come across one someday to cover that in a video. But anyways, this is basically in B+ for all of the same reasons as Crossy Road. In my eyes, these are very similar games. They just demand a very different skill set. So whereas Crossy Road is a lot of micromanagement and patience and kind of planning your pathing like 10-20 steps ahead of where your poultry is, in Flying Tickets, it's more like a rhythm game, and you have to keep a beat with your bird and know when to stop and when to speed up depending on the pipe patterns. I'm not amazing at this game. The footage you saw for that video is someone else who kind of helps me behind the scenes with a lot of recording. I do play almost everything on the list. I will call out the ones that I didn't play. I think this game's pretty hard, and I like Crossy Road a lot more, but these are basically two birds of a feather. They are both on a similar payout system. I have experienced both of them having those same boot loops where it just restarts Windows. With my personal bias, I am giving a slight edge to Crossy Road because I think this jackpot is a little more fun and a little faster. Alright, so this is Gear It Up. It's like this weird obstacle course game where you have to guide a ball up several gears, and if you reach the top, you get to this stupid wheel thing and you have to time it correctly to win the jackpot. This is a good ticket farming option. I think it's a very middle-of-the-road A-tier kind of game. It's a very honest game. It shows the jackpot and it feels fairly consistent to replicate. On paper, this should be A+ for the same reasons as Clown, but by the game's design, the jackpot numbers are pretty low. On most arcade visits, you'll only maybe have one opportunity to play this game at a decent jackpot number, so it's more of a one-and-done kind of game, but it's still worth including because this is free money. If it is close to the jackpot ceiling, you should play this game. Up next on deck, we've got Harpoon Lagoon. This is a pretty interesting game. It's like one of those bar games where it's like a game on a table and you're looking down at an aquarium and you need to harpoon fish for tickets. For me, this is like a B-tier game. It's kind of on the cusp with B-. I'm gonna round it up to B just to be nice. It is skill-based, but you will encounter some RNG with the fish spawning patterns. A number of you guys mentioned the two-player strategy where you need to take one of the bodyguard sharks away to create an easy opening for the main shark. Personally, I don't like this strategy. You have to pay twice for the same jackpot. I mean, you do collect some tickets from clearing the bodyguards, but it's not much. Some of you guys even mentioned that the shark eventually does barrel rolls if you start winning too much. So I wasn't good enough to trigger this on video, obviously. I was playing only on the single player format, and it is doable, it's just kinda difficult. So while the main shark would be the minor jackpot of this game, there is a very, very rare jellyfish that spawns. I have only ever seen this once in my lifetime from checking this game. It appeared really late into the production of my Harpoon Lagoon video, and it just barely made the cut. It was like a buzzer beater. While this game doesn't feel very consistent to me, I think it can still be situationally viable. Ah yes, we've got Keymaster next. There's a good chance you found my channel because of this video, so this game will always have a place in my heart. That said, this is a prize game, and comparing it on a Redemption Arcade list is kind of apples to oranges. That said, this game is garbage. It is very ambiguous on payout windows, requires you to permanently live at the arcade to try and figure out how many losses are needed before playing, and to even check if it is paying out, you're gonna have to waste some money. For some fun trivia on this game, someone in the comments did mention that the music from this game is actually from an obscure PlayStation 1 game, so that's pretty neat. Next, we've got Kung Fu Panda Dojo Mojo. For me, this is like a slightly worse Crazy Tower, so to nobody's surprise, this is another A-tier game. It's also a rotational payout game. Sometimes you can win outside of the payout window. It's a mix of skill and RNG. So much like Basketball Pro and basically anything on this tier list, be careful of bait copies. I have encountered a few copies of this game where some buttons just don't work and the game becomes impossible, so use your own judgment. For the next game, we've got Mega Stacker, and we're specifically looking at the Redemption version. There are two different versions of this game. There's one with prize doors where you're playing to win a large prize, and there's also the version we're talking about here that has a major and minor jackpot amount of tickets. So Mega Stacker is this game where you have to stack a tower up to the top, so think Crazy Tower but now in a 2D setting. For me, this is a B- game. It is borderline viable, and it is coming dangerously close to that. It is another rotational payout game like those A-tier ones like Kung Fu Panda and Crazy Tower, but I think it's significantly worse. One issue I have with this game is the major and minor jackpot. This means that if you're even playing for the minor jackpot, the arcade is still going to raise the cost to play this game because there is a large value that is hypothetically winnable. I personally find the rotational payout nature of this game is also a lot harder to consistently win than Crazy Tower and Kung Fu Panda, so I think it belongs in B-. Depending on cost to play and how many tickets can be won on the major and minor, it could still be worth playing, so I think this one is very circumstantially viable. So the next game we're talking about is the Monopoly Coin Pusher. This is a Monopoly branded coin pusher where there's coins being pushed, but we don't really care about that. You want to light up these light bulbs by dropping a coin when the light flashes, and if you get all of them, you make the game do the start feature. I had originally had this game in B tier, but I think this was a little generous. I'm going to be downgrading this one to B-. It's still viable, but I find it's a little harder to justify. I've been playing this one a bit more since making that video, and the jackpot value can get very low. So it absolutely has some sort of hidden rotational payout system. So on top of needing to wait for a scenario where it is almost ready to hit the start feature, you are now face checking what could be a very low jackpot. I'll save this tangent for the hotly requested Monopoly Games video. Alright, so up next we've got Monster Drop Xtreme. It is a skill-based drop timing game where you have to drop a ball on this carousel. This is a very meh B-tier game. It can be viable when the copy behaves correctly. I find this is nearly impossible to find. But when you do find a copy that does behave as intended, you will find that the cost to play and the ticket output is not nearly as good as the other games at that same arcade. And I say this again because the game has a major and a minor jackpot. If you just look at the board, you'll notice the major jackpot is on this elevated board where the minor one's actually on the board, so that one is doable, but good luck winning the major one. It's just there to make you lose more money. Okay, so for our next game, we've got Nerf Arcade. This game is essentially a shooting gallery where you have to shoot Nerf bullets at targets, you have a time limit, it is a rotating scripted carousel, and you just need to memorize a specific flow of play, a bunch of patterns to follow. This is also top of A. I would say this is tied with Down the Clown. It's really up to your preference which one you want leading this tier. But honestly, I like both of them. I'm not going to judge you on either placement. It is kind of fun. It's not Centipede Chaos fun, but I find this one to be more enjoyable than most kiddie casino games. It has a deceptively high skill ceiling and very good replay value, But going back to ticket potential, it's an A+ for all of the same reasons as Clown. It has a visible jackpot. You can keep winning it over and over again up until a specific skill ceiling. Other skilled players can price you out of this game if you can't keep up with them. I will say this is another video I wouldn't mind redoing, and I say that because I have gotten a lot better at this game. I say this because the strategy I had followed in that video is not good enough, and I knew that going in, I just wasn't sure how to get a higher score. But from watching the guy that's been putting these 400k scores, I now understand a new route, and while I'm still not perfect at it, I have a much better score, but it's still not good enough. Once I get a lot better at this game, I wouldn't mind redoing it. I think this might be an opportunity to make another short, just because I don't believe that strategy demands a full video. I already talked enough about it in my initial Nerf video, but I personally like longer form videos. The shorts are very experimental. I don't generally watch shorts in my free time. Up next, we've got Piano Keys. This is an off-brand version of those old mobile games. There were many versions, all sorts of titles. This is a meme tier game. It belongs in C tier. It's not very good for tickets. You generally play this one for fun. It's only really there for the rhythm gamers to flex high scores. It does pay tickets, and you can figure out the hypothetical ticket potential by reading a decal that should be on the game. But I wouldn't take this one too seriously. Okay, so our next game is Pearl Fishery. This is basically a coin pusher, but instead of coins, we have pearls, and there's a little plinko-like thing that pushes your pearl around, decides where it falls. Every time you push a red pearl off, it goes into this wheel game. There's a jackpot, you know, the whole 9 yards. This is an A- game for me. I do like this one for farming tickets. I think it's a little more original than most coin pushers. You do have to rely on RNG with the plinko component, the spinning wheel, but you can stage the game in such a way that you only play when there are pearls near the edge, when party time is close to happening, and when you can get multiple red pearls at once, because that can really help change your odds on the spinning wheel. So I would never recommend chaining plays on this game, but if you see the right scenario, this can be a very strong ticket farming option. The next game in our kettle is Popcorn. This is a legacy redemption arcade game. It is much older than a lot of the games we've talked about so far. It's this game where they're cooking popcorn, but it's getting real violent, and you gotta swing this bucket around to catch all of the popcorn. It sucks to say, but this is obviously not a good ticket farming option, and this is mainly because it's very RNG reliant, and on top of that, because it's a legacy game, the ticket values do not hold up with modern ticket inflation. It can hold up in vintage arcade scenarios where every game is very old, but even if you do adjust it with some modification to make it pay more tickets, I would still leave it in D tier. It is a very volatile and random game. Oh boy, it's time to talk about Pop the Lock. I'm just gonna cut to the chase. This is my number one. This is S tier. The amount of prizes I've won, they have typically been on the back of this game. Obviously not all of the tickets. You want to diversify the games you play. We will talk about sustainable farming another day. If you are good enough, you can go infinite and chain jackpots back to back. But on the topic of sustainable farming, this is not a wise decision. Anyone that comes from a background of playing games that require fast reaction timing, doesn't really matter the genre, could be shooters, rhythm games, RTS, MOBA, whatever else you want. Everyone who has the reaction timing for those kinds of games, you are able to win this jackpot. It is a perfect blend of being a decent challenge while also being too hard for the casual arcade goers. That said, be careful of bait copies of this game. This won't be a number one option at every arcade. At some places, I've found that this game will stop taking your inputs if you've won too many times. As in, you jackpot the game, play it again, and then like 10 dots in, it just kills you. Some of you guys have commented about this and you're not crazy. I entirely believe you, and the exact same thing happens to me at a select few arcades. If you're playing on a copy like this, you downgrade the game to A and treat it like the other rotational payout games, and you have to try to catch the jackpot when enough casuals have lost on the game. Rolling in next, we've got Power Roll. This is a game where you have to pull a lever back and use that to vault a ball forward on this kind of elevated ramp, and it stops on specific ticket spots. This is also S tier. It is a serious contender for the number one spot. It is purely skill-based, it is a very fast jackpot, and you can replicate this one back to back. I personally don't think this game is very hard. I learned it in one afternoon and it became a very reliable ticket farming option, but I find that the power and the distance you have to pull back is different from each arcade. Some feel stronger or weaker than others. I would typically follow the lines that get vandalized on the game. Yeah, a lot of people will start like drawing grooves or like vandalizing the sticker on the game, and you should typically try to aim your lever around that. Before we do the next game, I just want to remind you all about how arcades nerf games, because you may be looking at this list so far and being like, hey, that's Pop the Lock and Power Roll. Those games blow. They only pay 250 tickets at my local arcade. Well, yeah, you know, these S-tier games, they typically get nerfed when lousy farmers milk these games into the ground, and that's how we end up with scenarios like that. Alright, so the next game we have is Quik Drop. This is a game where there's a bunch of rotating cylinders. You have to drop balls quickly, do it under a time limit. If you make all 50 balls reach the cylinders under the time limit, you win a jackpot. The jackpot target moves around, it resets on a win, it goes up a bit every time someone loses, they have floors and ceilings. I am going to begrudgingly put this game in S tier with a very, very large asterisk. I personally dislike this game. Almost no copy you'll come across is good enough to be worth farming. I find this game breaks down a lot and arcades can't be bothered to fix it. You'll find that it just doesn't drop balls, or they've configured it in a way where the jackpot target and the time limit don't make sense. Now that said, there have been a few edge cases with this game. If you are at a brand new arcade and they have a brand spanking new copy of this game, nothing is wrong with the wear and tear, they have it on a pretty decent jackpot target. In these scenarios, I have personally seen this game to be the best option in the entire arcade. This game is skill-based, and when it behaves correctly, you should be farming it. It's good enough that it's worth vetting at your arcade, but be very, very careful with this game. If you notice weird behavior with your copy, don't fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. This game steals lots of money from people who are just 1 or 2 balls short, even though the game is repeatedly not dropping balls or dropping too many balls on your one press. Be very, very careful with this one. Coming in next, we've got the 7 Granddad Coin Pusher. It's a game with a lot of weird mini-games all working at once. It's a coin pusher where you get tickets for dropping stones off the edge. You also get a minor jackpot if you can make this red light carousel game land on the stop segment. There is also a god-awful cyclone game that gives you the major jackpot. It is an absolute mess, and I had originally had this game in B-. I think this was a little too harsh. This game isn't B- bad. This can be reliable in specific circumstances, so I'm actually going to be upgrading this one to B tier. I still don't think it's good enough to go any higher than this. Just the nature of being a coin pusher, it can be hard to be consistent with these games. Sometimes a surefire board that looks like 1 play away from winning the minor jackpot, it can become 2 or 3 or even worse. You never know with these games. I personally don't find coin pushers to be very consistent. But in very staged scenarios, you can get decent ticket payouts from this one. The minor jackpot I have no issues with. If the circumstances align, it is very easy to win this. But for the major jackpot, I have tried countless times and this thing feels nearly impossible. It feels very cheaty. I find when you are stopping the light anywhere on the board, it stops very quickly. But when you stop it near the bonus spot, I find it just stutters and it just moves you to one of the neighbors. That said, I have won the major jackpot exactly once. There was one time that I was playing for the minor jackpot and I got one of the clamshells to fall off, and I decided to give it another try. So I was tapping to the beat like a metronome, and you can follow, half circles, quarter circles, whatever makes sense to you. And then the moment you go for the bonus spot, that's when you stop tapping the board and you tap the button instead. This worked for me. It does not feel consistent. If you can get consistent at this game should go much higher because this value can get crazy high. But I still feel like you're going to lose a lot of money trying to force this major jackpot. For our next game, we've got Slam a Winner. This is basically a legacy version of Monster Drop. It's another drop the ball on this rotating carousel game. But instead of having a stupid and impossible monster jackpot in the middle, you have some more useful stuff. For me, this game sits in B tier, but not for the same reasons as Monster Drop. I feel this game is a little more consistent than Monster Drop as far as wear and tear and ball drop timings go. The only reason it sits in B tier is because of ticket inflation. You're not going to see high values from this game unless a lot of casuals are losing on this game, but I wouldn't hold your breath for this one. It's absolutely wild to me that being a much older game than Monster Drop, I still find this game behaves better. On the topic of other versions of games, there is a Slam-A-Winner Xtreme. I have only ever seen one copy of this game and it wasn't even working. So I still haven't played this game, I'm still looking. Alright, up next we've got Smokin Token. This is a game where you drop a token down a ski slope and it's got to jump through a ticket hole. This is essentially a C- game. It is skill-based and it could be viable in a hypothetical legacy arcade scenario. But the only real issue with this game is power creep and ticket inflation. The numbers it has just doesn't keep up with modern arcade ticket amounts. It also requires repeat plays to get the bonus values up because there's a multiplier system and all that, so you're gonna waste a lot of money getting a respectable amount of tickets from this game. Now, if you want to hit the slopes with a viable option, there is Smokin Token Xtreme, which is a reboot of the original Smokin Token game, but it now has updated ticket values and a reworked jackpot system. For me, this is an S- game. It is a similar premise to the original Smokin Token, but the updated ticket values help tremendously. I'm putting this game in S- and not S because depending on how your arcade has configured this game, you do need to chain several plays to be able to hit the bonus. If you have perfect timing, this is basically S tier, but if you are learning this game, it can get kind of expensive having to repeat several tokens just for one jackpot. For our next game, we've got Space Invaders Frenzy, which if you're familiar with the Space Invaders franchise, this is again a Redemption Arcade adaptation of that format. If I'm gonna level with you guys, this is by a very wide margin my second favorite Redemption Arcade game. It's not nearly as fun as the Centipede Chaos game, but it is still decently fun, and it's better than basically everything else on this list as far as fun goes. Now, if we're going to talk about tickets, this is another A-tier rotational payout game. It is hypothetically winnable outside of the payout window, but that window will continue to shrink with every high score that gets set. I believe the impossible to win jackpot target is tied to whatever is on the leaderboard. They just add a few thousand on top of it. My only real issue with this game is that you need to pay to check the jackpot target and see if it's paying out. Otherwise, you can just wait for a casual to play the game and you decide if it's worth playing or not. And much like a lot of these games, a skilled ticket farming degenerate can price you out of this game if you cannot keep up with the jackpots they're setting. One final point regarding the two-player part of this game, some of you guys mentioned this game rewards both players the full jackpot value, whereas I claim the manual says it splits it. Here's the passage from the manual that made me believe this. I thought it was splitting because the way it pays out tickets at my arcade was that the jackpot payout only counted up to the bonus value subtracted by the amount on the summary screen. That was my second video I had made, so when naive me saw the ticket dispensers end on a number around 300 to 50 to 80-ish on both of our ticket dispensers, I interpreted that as a split 500 jackpot that was adding our summary values. So yeah, my bad. So the next game we have swinging in is the Spiderman Coin Pusher. I had originally had this game in A tier, but I gotta upgrade this one, honestly. This one's A+. It deserves to be up here. In the category of coin pushers, this is my favorite coin pusher. It is easily the most inspired one I have played. As commenters pointed out, this one emulates those Japanese metal games more than our traditional Western coin pushers. It's this absolute hodgepodge of various mini-games. You have to push tokens to make Spider-Man's balls drop, and when that happens, you trigger wheels, you trigger rapid auto shot time. There's also a stop timing game for the major jackpot. This game can be a bait. You should only really be playing this game when you're close to triggering a lot of the mini games. Overall, it just kind of feels like a better Pearl Fishery, a lot less random, but you still can get screwed by RNG sometimes. Like with the red ball wheel game, I don't feel a consistent timing with this, so I generally choose to only play when Spider Sense is really close. But the real revelation for me is honestly the major jackpot. One of you guys had left a comment about how to do the stop timing, so after I made the video, I kept trying with following that advice, and since then, I have won this jackpot several times over. This absolutely feels doable. It's kinda hard, but you can replicate it. Obviously, this game isn't perfect. You can get screwed by RNG. I have had several plays where I've gotten multiple red balls into the wheel game, and none of them incremented the spider sense or got me a super spin. While I do believe in this game and think it's quite strong, I don't think it goes any higher than this. A+ is maybe even a little generous, but I really like this game. Alright, so the next game is Spider Stompin'. It's a legacy arcade game with a bunch of spiders and you gotta stomp on them when the lights come on. So it's kinda like playing like DDR, Pump, or Step Mania, but you have to look down instead of at a screen. It's an absolute ergonomic nightmare, but there is a charming novelty to it. That said, this game is D tier. It pays absolutely abysmal tickets. I personally think it's a funny game. You just kind of play this one for the novelty, not for the tickets. I also want to reiterate that spiders are a healthy part of your home's ecosystem and you shouldn't stomp on them. So I'm very happy that the kid loses in the comic strip. Coming in next, we've got Spinner Frenzy. This is allegedly a skill-based game where you have to make a fidget spinner spin at exactly 500 RPM. This is a very confident C tier for me. On paper, it should be a skill-based game, but I really don't believe in this one. How could you possibly visualize 500 RPM? Even if the arcade doesn't mess around with the RPM rounding window, this still feels like a very inconsistent farming option. When you look at a game like Power Roll, you have a very easy visual indicator of where you need this ball to go, and you can get a feeling for what you have to do with the lever. With this game, how on earth do you replicate this? It's the funny meme fidget spinner game and nothing else. For a bit of a palate cleanser, we have Spongebob Pineapple Arcade next. You have to drop tokens on this elaborate carousel. It has these complicated mini features you can trigger. This is a card collecting game, so every card can be cashed in for tickets, but if you choose to get the entire cast and build Exodia, you can cash them in together for a major jackpot. For me, I believe this game is A-. I think it's a very solid card collector, but I have a few grievances. I find that coin pushers in general are expensive. While I don't look at specific arcades, I think it's fair game to judge the trends across all the arcades. And a big one I find is that every arcade I've been to tends to overprice coin pushers when you compare them to other games. My other issue with this game is that you can't generally aim where the token goes. It only goes into this carousel, and that's how you get other tokens to drop on the board. So I find it's really difficult to get cards that are either on the left or right side of the game. But I find this game is very fast at pushing center cards. I have been able to personally fill out the set for this game several times over, and it's by only playing for cards in the center that are really close to the edge. For our next game, we've got Stacker Blue. You'll remember we spoke about Mega Stacker earlier. It's the same game where you have to stack a tower to reach a major or minor prize. But this one is an older version and it's strictly a prize-based game. However, arcades can choose to put ticket vouchers in these games, and this could make any of them redemption games. I'm just throwing this one in C tier. I don't really like prize games. Just like Keymaster, use your judgment with the expensive prizes. It's almost always too good to be true. You're probably not going to win that iPad or game console on your first play. The only reason I haven't put this game in D tier is because of the minor prize. This one obviously pays out more frequently than the major jackpot. That said, I still believe you're better off learning any other redemption game, jackpotting that game twice, and then going to the prize room to win an equivalent piece of microplastic or e-waste. What do we have next? Oh god, it's the Star Trek coin pusher. I'm just gonna come out and say it, I fucking hate this game. A number of you guys have been able to find success with this game, and you know what? More power to you guys, especially if yours is the older version with plastic chips. But I got to play this game at 2 different arcades, and oh my god, this is by a large margin the worst coin pusher I have ever played. Giving this thing C+ is generous. The token bottlenecks can get so bad on this game that on 2 different occasions, I have made the game run out of tokens. It gets so bad that no cards move because they all just crowd surf on the tokens, but you have jammed so many tokens on the board that you need a technician to clear the board and reset the tokens. I don't want to admit how much money I wasted trying to get meaningful B-roll footage for this game. I had initially put this in B- because I was under the impression that this was a good ticket farming option and that my local copies were just really bad. Honestly, I shouldn't worry about that kind of stuff and just start off with my own opinion. Thankfully, you guys in the comments called me out for this, and I ended up downgrading it in the community post. This was then followed up with the poll where I asked for everyone's opinion on the game. I'm glad that more than half of the participants agreed with the new placement, with a solid 80% agreeing that it should not be in any of the viable tiers. As much as I hate this game, it's not D tier bad. You can still win a card if it's kinda near the middle and like half dangling off, and you just pray that you don't make the game run out of tokens. But I cannot in good faith recommend this game. This is easily the worst coin pusher, and it's not even close. Okay, for the next game, I really don't believe you guys have a strong enough attention span to get through all of the information without some visual aids. So here you go. So this is Subway Surfers. It's a Redemption Arcade adaptation of the mobile game. You more or less have to collect these letters, spell out Kong, and then you win the bonus, you know, that whole thing. This is a C tier game. I really don't believe in this one in any capacity. I think it's quite bad. It is winnable, but it is very RNG reliant, and I find that the game is just really grimy. The title screen shows you how many tickets you win, and they do this kind of predatory thing with how they font and color the words and numbers here. But yeah, this is a meme tier option. Up next on the midway, we've got The Simpsons Kooky Carnival. This is another token rolling game. You have to use a minimum of 3 plays to spell out win. If you do this, you get a jackpot. This is another S- game. It's very similar to Smokin Token Xtreme. It's a consistent skill-based jackpot, but I'm giving a minor penalty again for the 3 separate plays to reach the main jackpot. But as far as older Redemption Arcade games go, this is one that can legitimately keep up with the modern farming options, as long as the arcade programs it to have a decent jackpot amount. For the next game, we have Timberman, which is a Redemption Arcade port of a mobile game of the same name. For me, this is B tier. It's a very okay and maybe a little too honest of a ticket farming option. As this commenter pointed out, it's just 2-tile piano keys. It pays out tickets per chop, so you can theoretically go infinite if you're fast enough. But that won't happen because the degrading timer will eventually catch up to you. For the copy that I was playing on for this video, I found that these high scores never reset, so I wouldn't put too much faith into this part of the game. It can pay decent tickets if you're good enough. Now you may notice up next we have Timberman again, but this one is a different mode. The game can be set into 2 different games. The previous one we talked about was where you were chopping an endless tree, but with this one you have an end goal. You have to chop down a tree to save some birds at the top. So this one is just reach a goalpost to win a jackpot. This is identical to Crazy Tower, Kung Fu Panda, Space Invaders. It is just another rotational payout game. The difficulty moves on wins and losses. When a lot of people have lost, the game is piss easy, but when too many people win, it becomes a Kaizo game and good luck winning. It can be winnable in the harder scenarios, but you do need task level inputs to win. For our next game, we have Tower of Tickets. You essentially need to find a timing to move this arm with the various ticket prizes to win them. There's actually 2 versions of this game. There's one that has a scoring hole so that when you win the ticket tower, it falls down and you need to bring that ticket to the prize counter to win your tickets. More frequently, you're going to find a board the platforms version where you have to push the ticket tower onto your platform and that grades your ticket, pays you out, and then it returns to the carousel. So obviously this is a skill-based game and it's a serious contender for the number 1 spot, so this is S tier, that's not really debatable here. As far as the number 1 spot goes, I would put the board the platforms version there, and if we are only talking about the scoring hole version, I would maybe even downgrade this game to S-. On the scoring hole version, this game becomes a one and done kind of deal. The moment you take every high value ticket tower, you have to come back tomorrow to see those on the carousel again. But going back to the board the platforms version, you can go infinite and win this as many times as you'd like, although you do have to wait for it to count your tickets before it goes back into play. A number of you guys mentioned the arm timing can change after winning a tower. I didn't see anything in the manual about this, and I didn't really notice it on the copies that I was playing on. I have been able to win this game back to back, so if it is changing your timing, all you really need to do is just adjust it and buffer your timing a little earlier to account for this. But again, play these games for yourself and use your own judgment. I am not a source of truth for all of these games. Sometimes I'm wrong, but I try not to be. For our next game, we have Wacky Ducks. It's a game where there's a bunch of ducks just minding their own business in the pond and you're just punching them for some reason. But every time you punch them, you win some tickets. It is a skill-based game, but again, ticket inflation has been very mean to most of these legacy arcade games. So you know where this one's going. I don't really need to elaborate much further here. While it is amusing, you play this one for the novelty and not for the tickets. For the next game, we have Wacky Gators. It's a game where we intruded a swamp and we started hitting a bunch of gators for some reason. It's also supposed to come with a mallet, but because this is a very old game, you're going to have a lot of trouble finding the mallet, and it's just a miracle that I found a working copy as it is. To nobody's surprise, this is another D-tier game. It is actually my personal leader for the lowest ticket output of any of these games. I do like the comment that discusses that since this was a Japanese Namco arcade game, the redemption side was probably tacked on near the end when they were localizing this for Western audiences. So again, you don't really play this one for the tickets, you just kind of do it for the novelty of it. To round out the wacky trio, we got Whack'em Funky Gators. This is more or less an HD remake of the original Wacky Gators, and they kinda leaned into the fact that people like using their hands, so there is no mallet included with this one. While I am currently covering these games alphabetically, it's very convenient that the Wacky Animals video also covered these games in the same order. While this is a funny game, I really don't see it as a viable ticket farming option. It's actually bottom of C-. I will admit even Blox Breaker is better than this one. It's this weird blend of needing to play fast, but also needing to time the game-ending whack with this rotating ticket barrel. It just doesn't feel easy to replicate. You also can't cheese the game by spamming all the buttons because there is an anti-spam feature. As many of you guys pointed out in the comments, this is very obvious in hindsight. That said, it will always have a hypothetical potential to give a larger payout, and that alone is what's keeping this game out of D tier. For our next game, we have the Wheel of Fortune Coin Pusher. I had originally placed this game in B tier, but I'm going to downgrade it to B-, right behind the Monopoly game. It is very similar to the Monopoly Coin Pusher. You want to drop a token, try to hit a light timing. You hit enough of these, you get to spin the wheel. That's where the big tickets are. Nobody really cares about the coin pushing aspect. While it is skill-based, it feels significantly harder than the Monopoly game's timing, and it typically leads to similar jackpot amounts. It is mildly affected by ticket inflation, but I think it can still be viable for ticket farming in some situations. For the next one, we have wheel games. I'm just gonna cut to the chase. These are D tier. I absolutely despise these games. They're garbage tier. I understand that video was flawed. It has some mistakes. I did include a game like Spin and Win, and that one's not really a wheel spin. It's more like a cyclone game. But I will say my rule of thumb is that if the game is shaped like a wheel, you shouldn't play it. It's almost always garbage. I deliberately chose not to include any gameplay of those games in that video because I don't want to encourage these games. They may as well be slot machines. And now, I do understand there are edge cases where you can cheese these games with some lineup or method to always land on the jackpot, but this will 100% piss off the arcade management and look like an exploit. All of these games have ticket statistics, and the management can see who is winning and how much they're winning. They are likely viewing this game as a spin the wheel and enjoy the thrill of chance. I just want to remind everyone that playing these games does cost real money. If you like spending $2 to watch a wheel spin for 10 seconds and then issue out 10 tickets, then more power to you. I'm not going to tell you how to get your thrills at the kiddie casino. Jokes aside, don't let me or anyone else gatekeep you on what games are fun and what games are bad. Just, do your own thing. But if we are looking strictly at the ticket potential, I think you should avoid these games. For our next game, we have Willy Crash. This game's kind of weird. It's like you have to shoot Willy out of a cannon, he lands on a building, and you win tickets based on the building. For me, this is a B tier game. It's dangerously close to B-. If you want my honest opinion, this is a dollar store version of Power Roll. Depending on arcade configurations, it can be harder and less consistent to replicate jackpots on, but it is skill-based. I have won this one several times since uploading. I do believe it is ticket viable, but not nearly as reliable as something like Power Roll. Looks like we're near the end. Our second last one today is Wonder Wheel. This is a legacy arcade game where you gotta drop a token on this vaulting conveyor belt to land in the Wonder Wheel for tickets. Honestly, this is one of the few legacy games that didn't get screwed by ticket inflation. I can't even believe the settings it was allowed to pay out when compared to other vintage redemption games. This is a very solid A-tier game. It feels very difficult to replicate, but not impossible. Hypothetically, it has crazy jackpot potential. If I was a TASBot playing all of these games at a perfect level, this game would probably be number 1 on the list. But we're only human, so I'm leaving this at A tier. Last but not least, we got Zombie Snatcher. This is a very similar premise to Tower of Tickets, but instead of tower tickets, we are now zombies and we have to collect the brain pucks. There are also letter pucks that help spell Kong, and when you do that, you get the zombie bonus. This stacks on top of the tickets you win from the pucks. Originally, I had this one near the top of S tier, but I think it stays in S tier, but I'm going to make a conscious decision to kind of distance it a little further away. I still believe this is a very strong ticket farming option. This game has crazy ticket potential. With most of these games that have major and minor jackpots, these are almost always detrimental to you. The major jackpots are typically close to impossible, and they just become a cheap reason to make the game more expensive. With Zombie Snatcher, this one is legitimately doable and it is all to your benefit. If you are playing this game from start to finish on an empty bonus board, it gets really expensive and I would not recommend playing that. But with this game, I find you just occasionally check the board, look if there's high value pucks or bonus pucks you want, win them and leave. I know this one isn't as consistent as Tower of Tickets, but the amount of times I have been to arcades, and this game has been 1 or 2 bonuses away from the jackpot. It's just free money, you have to take it. You kinda treat this one the way I've described the good coin pushers. You don't play this one from start to finish and just sit there forever. You only play this one when the zombie jackpot is close and if there are high value pucks that are easy to obtain. Because this game has multiple ports, you'll find a lot of morally flexible ticket farming degenerates will try to snipe you on this game. Having been on the receiving end of snipes, it really blows, but with enough practice, I have been able to defend myself against these dirty snipers. I mean, like hell, man, I've seen people run across the arcade the moment there's 1 bonus puck away. While people do suck, this game does not suck for tickets. I think this is a very good ticket farming option. So that wraps up the tier list. I'm glad to have ironed out some of these issues. I'm much happier with how this one looks. I will be continuing forward with this list. The old one is being decommissioned, so if any of these games are interesting to you, feel free to check out the Taking a Look At series. We dive a lot deeper into each game. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been leaving me comments and feedback. I do read the comments, and I am honestly trying to find all of the games you guys are suggesting. Sometimes I do find the requests, but they end up being broken. Also, some of you guys have caught on to request games that are in the backgrounds of the B-roll footage, and that's a more guaranteed way to confirm that I can cover the game. But don't let that deter you from requesting more obscure games. A number of these requests are the first time I've ever heard about the game that's being requested, so it's a good way to keep it fresh in my mind when scouting out a new kiddie casino. I do have my own personal wish list of redemption arcade games that I would love to cover someday, but I can't find these ones either. One final thing about this tier list, while it may look like a competition between each of these games, it really isn't. You'll find more success at the kiddie casino if you can learn as many of these games as possible. Arcades can always nerf the payouts and raise the cost to play, so don't pigeonhole yourself into one game. Learn as many of these as you can. thank you again for all the support throughout this series. I make these videos because I don't really like the Redemption Arcade content that's currently out there. It makes me very happy when I see that you guys feel the same way I do. My videos are a lot of work, but it has been rewarding to learn how to edit videos, along with learning about these games. I will continue the Taking a Look At series, but I'll try to weave in more experimental stuff. Honestly guys, the original vacuum video is still my favorite one on this channel. Beyond that, I will continue to take a look at many, many more kiddie casino games.